to start, okay? I have prepared a lot of material for you to practice with me tonight. And as I say, the way we're going to practice is that, first of all of us is going to receive the material. All of us are going to be receiving the passage, in this case, the lecture, and then we're going to be having 20 seconds to prepare our responses. And at the end, as I mentioned, we are going to be delivering the responses one by one, right? That is the mechanism. So I think that we are live already. So let us start, okay, to practice and to apply everything we learned yesterday that I think is going to be very much fruitful for your development in this exam. All right, so let's start. As you can see, I have the chronometer already settled, and also here I have the material. All right, well, so I hope that all of you are right now in a quiet space where nobody's going to annoy you, or you're not going to be interrupted, because as I say, we're going to be practicing. Make sure all of you that your microphones are well set and that everything is working correctly, so that we don't have inconveniences later on, okay, during the class. Okay, let's get into the fourth task of the speaking section. Here we are at this mode. Great. Well, let's start. Here we have the first lecture, okay? And as I say, we're going to listen to this lecture at the same time. All of us is going to listen to this. All of us are going to listen to this lecture at the same time. And then we are going to be having 20 seconds to prepare our responses. And then one by one, you're going to deliver your responses so that at the end, I can give you some feedback, okay? Of course, personalized feedback. Well, fantastic. Let's start. Here we have the lecture, and please, all of you start listening to a lecture on an academic topic. Let's go.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a physical science class.
So, in the early 20th century, there was this big debate going on in the scientific community. Did very small stuff like electrons behave like particles? Or did electrons, these negatively charged things that whirled around the nucleus of the atom, did these electrons actually behave like something else? Well, for a long time, it was assumed that because electrons were discrete, because electrons seemed to be individual objects with specific energy levels, for a long time it was assumed that electrons were simply small particles. But then, the double-slit experiment happened. In the double-slit experiment, electrons are shot at a screen containing two long vertical holes. The positions of the electrons after they go through the screen are captured on film. Now, experimenters expected that the results of the experiment would be simple, because, well, they thought that electrons were like small particles. They guessed that the electrons that went through the two slits would create a pattern of two narrow bands, or lines, on the film. However, this is not at all what the experimenters saw. Instead, they were shocked that the electrons formed an interference pattern, one by one, on the film. Now, in other words, the electrons randomly scattered all over the film in a wave-like pattern, instead of collecting in two narrow bands and creating the pattern that particles would make. So, the double-slit experiment was significant because it forced scientists to rethink the nature of electrons. They realized that electrons, like light, have characteristics of both particles and waves. Like particles, they collected one by one on the film. But like waves, they formed a complex interference pattern on the film, instead of forming two neat lines. And the results of the experiment? Well, they're discussed, debated, and reproduced to this day.
Using points and examples from the talk, describe the double-slit experiment and explain why the professor thinks that it is significant.
All right, well, I noticed that many of your classmates just got into the realium. Therefore, of course, if we continue right now, they are not going to be able to practice with us this round. So I think it's preferable to listen to it again, just this time, right? Remember that we always have 5 minutes of tolerance, but nonetheless, we always start a class from that part on. So I think it's very much recommendable for you to always try to be early in those 5 minutes of tolerance, all right? But anyways, let us listen to it one more time so that everybody can have the chance to listen to this lecture. And I think that most of you are going to be actually very much glad to listen to it again. All right. So let us listen to it one more time, as I say. And for those of you who just joined the class, what we are doing right now is listening to the lecture that, as you remember in yesterday's class, we debated would be the only information source we are going to be receiving for later performing on the fourth task of the speaking section. So what we have to do is to listen to this lecture and take notes while we listen. So please, let us listen to it one more time and make sure to take your notes, of course, on a sheet of paper with your pencil, because this is going to be what you're going to be summarizing, okay, in your response. So let us start one more time. Let us listen to this lecture on electrons.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a physical science class.
So, in the early 20th century, there was this big debate going on in the scientific community. Did very small stuff like electrons behave like particles? Or did electrons, these negatively charged things that whirled around the nucleus of the atom, did these electrons actually behave like something else? Well, for a long time, it was assumed that because electrons were discrete, because electrons seem to be individual objects with specific energy levels, for a long time it was assumed that electrons were simply small particles. But then, the double-slit experiment happened. In the double-slit experiment, electrons are shot at a screen containing two long vertical holes. The positions of the electrons after they go through the screen are captured on film. Now, experimenters expected that the results of the experiment would be simple, because, well, they thought that electrons were like small particles. They guessed that the electrons that went through the two slits would create a pattern of two narrow bands, or lines, on the film. However, this is not at all what the experimenters saw. Instead, they were shocked that the electrons formed an interference pattern, one by one, on the film. Now, in other words, the electrons randomly scattered all over the film in a wave-like pattern, instead of collecting in two narrow bands and creating the pattern that particles would make. So, the double-slit experiment was significant because it forced scientists to rethink the nature of electrons. They realized that electrons, like light, have characteristics of both particles and waves. Like particles, they collected one by one on the film. But like waves, they formed a complex interference pattern on the film, instead of forming two neat lines. And the results of the experiment? Well, they're discussed, debated, and reproduced to this day.
Using points and examples from the talk, describe the double-slit experiment and explain why the professor thinks that it is significant.
Great. Well, there we are. Those were the, okay. Well, that was the lecture, right, on this topic. Fantastic. Very good. So now that we have listened to this lecture on physics, right, and we discussed electrons and basically the nature of electrons, what is it that composes the nature of electrons? Are electrons particles? Are they waves? What are these very little particles, right? So I think that now that we have listened to this, we can start with our 20 seconds to organize, right, the ideas and all the notes that we have taken, so that in our response, if you remember, we're going to follow the structure that we recommended yesterday for you to follow and respond in this task. Let me just, before we start, remember you the template, just in case some of you forgot to take notes on this. I think it's going to be better for you to. Great. Well, please look at my screen, and you're going to be able to see this one more time. All right, so as you can see, this is it. This is the fourth structure. And well, as you can see, it consists in 4 different steps. The first step basically consists in you mentioning this introductory phrase. In this lecture, we've been presented to the fascinating topic of, and what you do right after that is, well, simply mentioning, right, the topic of your lesson, the topic of your lecture, that in this case, of course, is particles. And well, after that, you start to summarize everything you have listened in this lecture. And the rest of the steps are basically for you to remember what to include in that summary. As you can see, the second step says that you should include in your summary the first lecture's point and illustration made by the professor. That is very important. Remember that professors include several points and several topics in their lectures, and you have to make sure that all these topics are included in your summary. Also, they present a lot of illustrations accompanying and sustaining those points, and you should include them. Of course, remembering what we also discussed yesterday, that sometimes it's not necessary nor recommendable to include all illustrations, but try to remember the criteria that we discussed yesterday to identify what are those illustrations, topics, or ideas that you should include in your summary, given the case that, of course, you will not be able to include everything within the response now. Why? Well, because you have to, well, it is a lot of information that is being mentioned here. And of course, it's completely impossible to include everything, right? Every single word. So you have to decide what to include, what to dispense with. And if you remember, we said that if the professor spends a long time discussing it, well, you should include it. And also, if you consider that your reviewer wouldn't be able to understand your summary, if you don't include that summary, well, include it, because if you don't include that point, include that point or idea, because it is essential for your summary to make sense and to be understood, right? So the third step is basically second lecture's point and illustration, and as well the fourth one, third lecture's point and illustration. Include all the points made in the lecture. If there are more than 3, include it. If there are more than 2, include it. But as I said, include everything and all the illustrations as well. All right, fantastic. So here we have the template. I hope that you have taken notes on this, and now we can start. Well, so please look at my chronometer here. For those of you who are practicing for the first time, as you can see, the chronometer has this green bar, and when the green bar gets empty, because when you respond is going to begin to get empty, the time is over, okay? So you're going to be able to identify when your time is over, when you see this green bar completely empty, okay? Well, let's start. I think that it is a good moment. So please, all of you, start preparing your responses for this question now. Great. Very good. All right, let us start, okay? So please, dear Camila, could you help me with this exercise to be the first one, okay, to respond? So please help me. Yes, please, dear Camila. Okay, so, well, please enable your microphone. Start responding to the question now.
So in this lecture, we've been presented to the fascinating topic of electrons. So it has been discussed that electrons behave like particles. They are negatively charged, or they are something else. It seems that they are something else, as they are individual objects that have simple particles in it. There has been an experiment placed, and their hypothesis was that there were 2 vertical holes in the electrons, but when the experiment took place, it has found that there were 2 slits on the pattern of 2 narrow lines, and instead it was an interference pattern 1 by 1. So then it has found that electrons have characteristics of waves and particles, and nowadays this has been discussed, debated, and reproduced.
Great, thank you very much, Camila. Very good. All right, fantastic. Let's continue. Okay. Alejandro Beltran, could you please be the second one in this round? Please turn on your microphone and follow your classmates' lead, all right? Basically, start please responding to this question now. Yeah, Alejandro, I cannot listen to you right now. I think that your microphone is not enabled.
I'm having a problem with my mic.
Yes.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can listen to you now. Fantastic, Alejandro. So would you like to continue?
Yes.
All right, great. So please start responding to this question now.
the lecture presented from the professor discussed the topic of beliefs and experiments of electrons in the early 20th century. Early in the 20th century, the people didn't know about the electrons' behavior, and the main features were if they were behave as particles or something else. This is the answer in that time describe a discrete behavior of the two
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alejandro. Very good. Okay, let's continue. Eric Torrico, could you please continue with the exercise? Great.
Okay.
Very
In this
good.
lecture, we've been presented to the fascinating topic of debate in physics. They were trying to find out whether the electrons behave like particles or something else, because the electrons are discrete and have specific energy levels. In the experiment they made, they were trying to find out if whether the electrons have a pattern of two narrow bands, but they find out that they were randomly scattered, and if they at first think that they were small particles, they now find out that electrons have an interference pattern and they act like a wave. So now they have to rethink the nature of the electrons, and they continue the debate until now.
Great, great, fantastic. Thank you very much, Eric. Very good. There you are. Very, very good. Cristobal, please, you're going to continue, right? So
Okay.
please hear Cristobal. All right, thank you very much. Start responding to the question now.
The video talks about the debate of community science about electronics. Debate speaks about electronics are behave or particles or something else. Electronics is like individuals, objects, or specific energy levels. Talk about the scientifics try to make experiments about the electrons are small particles to create neuronal bands or lines of the films. Until now, they are debating about if the electronics. Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear Cristobal. Ariel, please, dear Ariel Vasquez, you're going to continue, right? So please, dear Ariel, set up your microphone and start responding to the question now.
Okay. In this lecture, we have heard that in this discussion of electrons, if electrons behave like particles, it seems that they act like individual objects or small particles, but there was an investigation where it is trying to discuss this question. And in this experiment, electrons are shot into something. I didn't hear that too good, and the results were they form some waves. I mean the electrons form some waves, and at the end of this investigation, it forced us to rethink that the electrons, if they are single particles collected one by one, or if they are just weights, some weights.
Great, fantastic. Thank you very much, Ariel. Let's continue with Nathalie, please. You're Nathalie. You're going to follow up, okay? start responding to the question now.
Okay, in this lecture, we've been presented to the fascinating topic of debate of electrons, if they behave like simple particles or they are something else. So for that question, they start an experiment called double slit experiment, which consists in showed at the screen two vertical holes. So at first, they thought that the electrons will create a pattern of two lines on the field, but instead, the electrons they discovered that they have a characteristic like waves, which present a complex interference pattern in the electrons. So the experiment was significant because it forced science to rethink the nature of the electrons.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Natalie. Well, let's continue. Please here, Juliana, you're going to continue, right? Well, please start responding to the question now.
Okay, so in this lecture, we've been presented to the fascinating topic of electrons, and there was a debate in which they talked about if these electrons behave as particles or if they behave in a different way. So they did an experiment that was called double slit experiment, in which they thought that it will be easy because they thought that these electrons were small particles, but they found that they formed an interference pattern. So the conclusion was that electrons have both characteristics, and they behave as particles and as well as waves. So they thought that it was that it would be easy, but it was more than that.
Great. Thank you very much, Juliana. Fantastic. There you are. And Gisela, please, it's your turn now. So please enable your mic and start responding now.
In this lecture, we've been presented to the fascinating topic of electron in the physical science class. It started in the 20th century when some scientific start noticing what was the electrons. Is they think that they were only particles, but then they start making an experiment that what's called the double slits experiment, and that they thought, well, it consists that the electron will form two near bands on the field, but they went on shock when they noticed that all the electrons interference pattern all over the field. So that make scientists make again the doubt if the electrons were only particle, but it can behave also like weights. So that's for scientists to rethink what's the real nature of electrons.
Great. Thank you very much, Gisela. Fantastic. Well, let's continue with Natalia Bartha. Okay, so please, Natalia, start responding to this question now.
In this lecture, we've been presented to the fascinating topic of electrons in the physical science class. Well, in the early 20th century, there was a debate about the electrons behave, if they were just particles or if they will have a negative behave using atoms. So in this experiment, they found the two middle band or lines on the film, and they found significant things in the experiment. The electrons have two characteristics. If they were particles and waves. So nowadays they are still using this important experiment.
Okay. Thank you very much, Natalia. Sophia Paulina, please, you're going to continue. All right. Please start responding to the question now.
Okay. In this lecture, they present a topic about the nature of electrons. They debate in a class saying that a long time ago, scientists thought that the electrons were just simple particles. But then the double slit experiment placed and forced scientists to rethink the nature of electrons. They got shocked to see an interference pattern in these electrons, concluding that electrons behave like particles but also as negative charges.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Sophia. Fantastic. Okay, there you are. Angeline, please, Angeline, start responding to this question now.
Okay. In this lecture, we've been present to the fascinating topic of behavior of electrons. For a long time, it was assumed that electrons were simple small particles, but then an experiment called double slit experiment changed this theory because they could demonstrate that electrons can be not only particles, but also waves.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Angeline. There you are. Let's continue with Shirley. Shirley, please turn on your microphone and start responding to the question now.
This lecture, we have been presented to the fascinating topic about electronic in science class. The first, in long time, they think the electronic is a small particle, but they had the energy level different. Second, another experiment showed the significant result. The electronic had the specific characteristic and is a particle and had the waves. So the electronic is not just a small particle.
Okay. Thank you very much, Shirley. Very good. There you are.
Thanks.
Lucia, please, you're going to continue. We're about to finish, don't worry. Lucia, please, you're going to continue, right? So please start responding to this question now.
In this lecture, we've been presented to the fascinating topic of electrons, if they behave like particles or they behave in a different way. The scientists assumed that the electron was an individual object and has its own energy level. Therefore, they assumed they were small particles. And they expected, when they did the exercise, the experiment, that the positions would be simple because they were small. However, what happened, it was differently. And the truly result was that an interference pattern happened. And at the end, they conclude that the electron behave both like particles and waves. This experiment was relevant until this day because they changed the way that the electron was seen.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Is somebody lacking to respond, dear students? Please tell me. I just lost here the register. Is somebody lacking, please? Could you raise your hands so that I can give you the opportunity to respond? Yes, is somebody lacking to respond? Or everybody has responded already? Yes? Nobody? Okay, Alexander says, I'm online, but I don't have a microphone. Okay, it's fine, dear Alexander, don't worry. You're going to be able to listen to them. All right, thank you very much for telling me. Well, fantastic. So as you noticed, dear students, first thing that I wanted to remark here, we are a lot, right? In this group, we have a lot of the students. Therefore, of course, all of you need to have the opportunity and the chance to respond. Now, while you listen to your classmates, I think that a good exercise would be to listen to how they respond. And if you notice that there is something positive in your classmates' response, try to also apply it, right? And to, let's say, copy and imitate that from him or her. I think that by doing so, you're not going to waste that time while you're listening to your classmates. Because as I said, well, we are a lot of people, and certainly we need to listen to everybody, right? I think that it wouldn't be good to just listen to, let's say, 5 of you, and then to move on to another task, because all of you need to have some feedback, all right? But anyways, as I say, let us try to take advantage and avail that time by listening carefully to how our classmates respond, and also to imitate any particular positive, let's say, element that they include in their responses and that we are not actually considering, okay? Great, so what about, for example, Alejandro's response? I think, dear Alejandro, that your response was actually very good. My only recommendation would be, well, to speak a little bit faster. I think the reason why you didn't mention a lot of information that indeed you gathered, I noticed that you had information, nonetheless, you didn't have time to express it. It would be, as I say, to speak faster. Sometimes I think that what you have is that when you are, of course, not normally speaking Spanish throughout your day, what happens is that when you come here to these classes or to any other activity and experience in which you are forced to speak in English, it happens that your mind is a little bit slow, right, to think and to mobilize in English. So my recommendation in that case would be try to, before getting into the class, listen to 30 minutes of music in English, or listen to a podcast, or watching some series or something that, of course, is, let's say, delivered and spoken in English. And I think by doing so, your mind is going to get used to speaking English one more time. And by doing so, I think that that problem is going to be, if not solved, a little bit appeased, right? And apart from that, reading helps a lot in order to have your mind very much fresh and clear in this language, because of course, as we are Spanish speakers, it's very difficult for us to always keep our mind fresh. But a very good manner to do so, as I say, is continue listening to music in English before we start these classes, and also reading English as much as we can, all right? Reading is tremendously powerful. Very good, dear Alejandro. Camila's response, fantastic, as always, very good. Don't have any commentary. Very, very good. Eric Torrico as well. I think that Eric didn't have any particular error that I noticed. And it was fantastic. I don't have any commentary. Just say very good, all right? Yeah, no, my pleasure, Camila. Very good. Cristobal, Cristobal, I think that your response was also very good. My recommendation would be, for example, you said at the beginning of your response, we have listened in the video, you said, right? Well, video technically, or video wouldn't technically be the correct word here, because of course we're not, let's say, watching something, but audio, I guess, would be the orthodox expression or word or term. Nonetheless, well, it's just a very, very tiny detail, right? But if you want to, let's say, always remember very much to stick to the orthodoxy of these responses, I would recommend you to change that word into audio or in the listening passage, right? That I think those terms convey what we are listening to very accurately. But and secondly, I would say that apart from that, fantastic response. And my second very little recommendation would be with regard to the pronunciation of the word electrons, right? Electrons. But apart from that, electrons, right? You have the accent in the second syllable, electrons. I think that it is very good. Fantastic, Cristobal. Ariel, as well, incredible response. I found it to be very much successful and very succinct as well. My very tiny recommendation would be when at some point in your response, you say, I didn't hear something, right? You say, oh, I didn't hear that very well. And you continue explaining, right? And you basically apologize for not hearing very well. That is not, something very much recommendable. And this goes for all of you as well. So please, all of you, dear students, pay attention to what I say to your classmates, because these recommendations can also apply to you. When Ariel said, I didn't hear that very well, so he apologized for not listening and he continued with a response. I think that is not very much, let's say, advantageous for your response. Remember that how or at what time or at what point is when errors become very much noticeable. It is when somebody remarks them, right? When somebody says, oh, you are committing a mistake. At that point is where errors become, as I say, relevant. So if you are somebody who goes about apologizing for your mistakes or for not having listened to something, of course that your reviewer is going to know that and is going to make a great deal of it, as I always say. But nonetheless, if you commit a mistake or if you didn't listen to something, let's say you were not able to understand a part of the lecture, just continue responding, as I say, avoiding mentioning any reference or any expression related to the fact that you indeed didn't listen to that part very well or you didn't understand that part. Because if you mention and make a reference about it and you say, I'm so sorry I didn't listen to this, it makes, as I say, the mistake, or in this case, it makes the absence of this information very much noticeable and relevant. But if you don't mention it, probably the reviewer is not going to notice it, because as I say, he listens to a lot of these responses throughout the day. And of course, he's not looking for this specific omissions. But as I say, if you just didn't listen to something, try to avoid mentioning that part, or try to explain it with your understanding, what you think would be, as I say, rational to say in that part. but of course, not adding information that is external, but trying to express it with maybe with simple words, or as I say, avoiding just mentioning such a topic. Okay, but apart from that, fantastic, Ariel, very good. Natalie, fantastic. Don't have any commentaries. As always, very, very good. Juliana as well, very good. I found your response to be very much natural, clear, smooth. Great, very good. Jesus as well, fantastic response, great summary, very much concise, succinct, awesome. Natalia as well, very good summary. Don't have any observations, nor commentaries. I think it was great. Sophia, I think that in your case, also your response was fantastic. I like it. I like how you summarize everything very much concisely without very short words, but nonetheless very much direct and straight. But I would encourage you to include more information if you're able to, because in your response, you didn't use like half of your time. And of course, it's not like the greatest of all things, but nonetheless, as I say, as you have 1 minute in order to respond, and I know that you have, of course, managed to collect a lot of information, it would be great if you mention more, if you talked about the illustrations, if you make more details, if you explain further that summary that you have managed to prepare in your 20 seconds of preparation. I encourage you, okay, very much to continue responding a little bit more, to use, I don't know, 50 seconds of your response. And if you don't want to use the entireness of your time, it's fine, but try to use at least 45, 50. And if you don't have more to mention in those last 10 seconds, it's fine. But half of the response seems to be, maybe for the reviewer, is going to lack something, like if you were not mentioning everything. But as I say, the only thing that I would recommend you, apart from that, fantastic. The same goes for Angeline. I think that in this case as well, you didn't use the entireness of your response. It is not, as I say, bad as such, but nonetheless, I would recommend you to try to give it more details, try to make it more, let's say, filled and full with illustrations, with the points made in the lecture, explain them further. Give yourself some time in order to clarify and to specify maybe some of the points made there. But as I say, apart from that, very good. Shirley as well, very good summary. I think that you were very much successful, and in this case, very much, as I say, direct in summarizing, and you didn't forget any of the main ideas in terms of points. My only observation would be with regard to the pronunciation of the word particle, right? Particle, remember that it's particle, as if you were saying parque, particle. But apart from that, fantastic. I think that it was very good. Okay, fantastic. And for Lucia, don't have any commentaries. I think it was, as always, great, fantastic, just very good. Okay. Well, let's go with for another practice. I think that it would be good to practice one more. And as I said, don't worry, because as I know that you have a lot of classmates, I'm gonna send to the WhatsApp group all the practices that we are not doing right now, so that in your free time you can finalize with these exercises and with actually more of those exercises. Okay, so don't worry about that. You're gonna practice more. But for now, let us practice together with this new lecture. Okay, so please take your notes and let us listen to this lecture.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a literature class.
Since the time of Aristotle, thinkers have struggled to define the nature of tragedy. You see, in classic literature, a classic tragedy is more than simply a story about an unfortunate occurrence. No, it's much more than that. A classic tragedy is a story about how a heroic person struggles to find happiness. But they somehow have a terrible flaw that negates the possibility of their happiness ever coming about. Nevertheless, tragic heroes will often accept responsibility for their downfall, admitting where they have been at fault. The audience experiences a sense of release or catharsis when they see the transformation of the characters and the nobility of their decision to accept responsibility in even the darkest circumstances. Aristotle believed that Oedipus Rex by the playwright Sophocles was one of the greatest tragedies ever written. It contained all the elements of a classic tragedy: an unsuccessful search for happiness, a tragic flaw, an acceptance of responsibility for one's faults, and catharsis. Oedipus is a heroic man who is quick-witted, strong, and ambitious. He sets out in the world to find happiness. However, his tragic flaw is pride. His pride leads him to kill a total stranger on the road. It also leads him to successfully answer the riddle of the Sphinx, a legendary monster. In gratitude for his achievement, the people of Thebes make Oedipus the king, and he marries the widowed queen of the city. However, a plague soon comes to Thebes, brought on by the anger of the gods. Oedipus eventually finds out that he is the reason for the plague. The stranger that he killed on the road was his father, and the woman that he married was his own mother. The play ends in sadness and disaster as Oedipus blinds himself and his mother commits suicide. However, before this happens, Oedipus apologizes for his pride and takes responsibility for all that happened, leading the audience to experience catharsis, a sense of release, thanks to his heroism in the face of suffering. No wonder Aristotle praised the play so highly.
Using points and examples from the talk, explain why the professor thinks that Oedipus Rex meets the definition of a classic tragedy.
Great. Well, I think that for those of you who have studied humanities, something related to social sciences, philosophy, and laws, things of that sort, this was a way more digestible lecture, right? That is to say, you found it to be more simple. Well, that is something that normally will happen. That is to say, sometimes these topics are going to be suitable for you because you are somebody who is, let's say, already immersed into that area. Nonetheless, sometimes, as in the last topic, for example, when we discuss physics, for many of you, this is not something that you are very much informed nor familiarized with. Therefore, as I say, you have to be prepared for everything. But as I say, given that your task is merely summarizing the topic, it is not necessary for you to be an expert on any topic, right? But sometimes, of course, it's going to be easier for you to understand. Well, let's get into the 20 seconds of preparation. All of you, please start preparing your responses now. All right, great. So please, dear students, it's time for us to respond. Let's see. Let's start with Natalia Bartha. You're going to start this time, okay? So please, dear Natalia, turn on your microphone and start responding to this question now.
In this lecture, we've been presented to the fascinating topic of classic tragedy in a literature class. So the professor talked about, describes classic tragedy like a person who struggles happiness. So it's he said that a person tries to release or have or usually have a catharsis and to accept responsibility even in bad circumstances. And he made an example about Oedipus. Well, he got married. Sorry, I don't understand mi letra, no entiendo.
Okay, no, it's okay. No, it's okay, dear Natalia. Don't worry, it's fine. It happens. Thank you very much. No, it's okay. Don't worry. Right. Well, very good. Thank you very much, Natalia. Let's continue with Sophia. Right. Well, please, dear Sophia, start responding to this question now. Are you there, dear Sophie? Shall we start again? Sophia says, sorry, my microphone doesn't work. All right, I'm so sorry. Well, I guess we'll have to continue. But anyways, thank you very much, Sophia. Don't worry. We are going to practice with you later on, okay? Yeah, try please. And if you manage to do it, tell me through the chat box as well. And I'm going to give you some space for you to respond, okay? Thank you. Well, let's continue with Angeline. Angeline, you're going to follow up, okay? So please start responding to the question now.
Okay, In this lecture, we've been presented to the fascinating topic of the nature of tragedy. The professor said that tragedy is more than a simple story about an unfortunate occurrence. That's all.
Right? Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Angeline. Very good. Let us continue. Okay, Shirley, please. We're going to follow up. So please start your Shirley to start to deliver your response now.
Okay. I try, but I don't listen well in this, but okay. In this lecture, we had to be presented to the fascinating topic about the classic tragedy in class for the professor. And first, he shows the transformation of the character and the personal and the notoriety of their decision or accept for responsibility, like example Oedius Rex, I think. Yeah, and was one of the greatest tragedies in the contain this element. So I think sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Shirley. No, it's okay. Don't worry. It's fine. It happened. Well, very good. Let's continue. Alejandro Beltran, please. You're going to follow up. Okay. All right. So please start responding to the question now.
In this lecture, we have been presented to the fascinating topic of classic tragedy. A story of how a person struggles with happiness. The professor gave an example of Oedipus, who entered to Thebes and kills his father, marries his mother, and experiences catharsis or takes responsibility of the acts happened, and kills himself, and his mother blinds herself and experiences catharsis.
Great. Thank you very much, Alejandro. Very good. Eric, you're going to continue. Please start responding to the question now.
Okay. In this lecture, we've been presented to the fascinating topic of literature debate, where they were talking of the nature of tragedy. And they were saying that the classic tragedy is the story of a hero that struggles with happiness or finding happiness. And they say that to make a classic tragedy story, the hero must accept the responsibility of his own acts. For example, Oedipus killed his father without knowing, and he had to marry his own mother. And when they find out, she killed herself, and Oedipus had to take the responsibility of the problems that he made. I think he had to accept the darkness circumstances, and that made the audience feel and experience the catharsis of this story.
Great. Thank you very much, Eric. Very good. Cristobal, please help me with your response, starting now.
Okay, the lectures talks about the nature of tragedy. The professor says the classic tragedy is more like a simple history. Tragedy is like a find happiness and talk about describes who person. Sorry, that's it. I don't understand my letter.
Okay, no, it's okay. It's okay. Thank you very much, Cristobal. Very good. Right. Well, let's continue. Ariel, please, Ariel. Start with your response now.
Okay, the professor talks about defining the nature of classic tragedy, and it's more than a simple story where an heroic person wants to find happiness, And the thing is, when the character assumes the responsibility of something he did that was very dark, and it is trying to teach us the acceptance of responsibility of an heroic and ambitious person like it was Oedipus, who is the main character of this story that the professor was talking about.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Fantastic. There you are. All right. Let us continue with Natalia. Please, dear Natalia. You're going to follow up, okay? So please, dear Natalia, start responding to the question now.
But I did it.
Oh, you're responding? Okay, yes.
Yes, I
I'm
was the
sorry.
first one.
Okay, great. Yes, it happens that as there are many people, the profiles constantly change of position. Therefore, it's very complicated to know who responded already. Well, let's continue with Lucia. This is your Lucia. You're going to continue. Start, please, responding to the question now.
In this lecture, we've been presented to the fascinating topic of classic tragedy, and it is described as a story about an heroic person who struggles to find happiness. However, it's hard for them to achieve them. And also the audience mostly experience some sort of catharsis when reading it and this kind of literature. Also, they give the example of Sophocles' literature was a perfect example according to Aristotle. And the main character of the novel is Epicles, and his tragic flaw is the pride throughout the story. And there are a legendary monster, then he marries a widow immediately after a plague is spread in the city. And later on, he discovers that the reason of the plague is him. And also discovered that the woman that he marries is his mom. And at the end, he takes responsibility, which makes the audience feel a sense of release and catharsis.
Great. Thank you very much, Lucia. Very good. Please, Alexander. Well, Alexander told me that he was not able to speak, all right? Paulina, please, dear Paulina. Let's continue with you. Where's Paulina? Oh, I think that Paulina just got out.
I think it's me, Sophia, also.
Okay. All right, fantastic.
Yeah.
Who continues? Okay, Guadalupe. Were you able to listen to the lecture? Yes.
Yes, teacher. My internet is a little unstable because of the wind, but
okay.
I will try. Yeah, I listen.
Okay, great. So who goes? So Paulina first. Paulina first. Paulina, you have not responded yet. Paulina.
Yeah, I have.
Oh, okay, you have. Okay, great. Well, so let's go with Guadalupe. So please, dear Guadalupe, start responding now.
In this lecture, we have been presented to the fascinating topic of nature of tragedy. The classic tragedy, it's more, the professor said that it's more complicated than it sounds. Of the main character that they talk about in the lecture, that he need to be responsible of his actions. Sorry, teacher.
Okay, yes. Thank you very much.
And
all right, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, fantastic. Is somebody lacking to respond?
Me.
Yes?
Me, teacher.
All right, great. Who goes first? So Gisela raised her hand, right? So Gisela, you're gonna go, and then Natalie, okay? So please, dear Gisela, start responding now.
In this lecture, we've been presented to the fascinating topic of classic tragedy in a literature class. Well, the professor started explaining of Aristotle, that is a classic character that was an historic, a heroic person.
Okay. The audio stopped for some reason. I guess you had some internet issues, dear Gisela. Cannot listen to you. All right. Well, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Gisela. Let's continue with Natalie and then Camila, okay? Fantastic. So please, dear Natalie, start responding to the question now.
Okay, in this lecture, we've been presented to the fascinating topic of classic tragedy, which is more than a simple story. It's where the hero struggles to reach happiness. So that's when the audience feel released when they experiment a transformation of the character. So we have an example here of Oedipus, who struggled with certain problems, but then he overcome them, but then he realized that he was the reason of all since the beginning, and so he realized he killed his father and married his mother. So he blinds himself, and his mom commits suicide, and that is when the audience feel released to experiment that, and that's a classic tragedy.
Great, fantastic. Thank you very much, Natalie. Wonderful. Camila, you're going to continue, right? So please, sir, Camila.
Okay.
Start responding to the question now.
In this lecture, we've been presented to the fascinating topic of nature of classic tragedy. The author says that it's not a simple story, and it is when a heroic person struggles in achieving happiness. It's when tragic heroes accept responsibility, making the audience lead to catharsis. So he explains of a character from Aristotle who is Oedipus, who is a strong man, but his tragic flaw is pride that makes him kill someone during his journey. And later, he finds out that the man he killed was his father and the woman he married was his mother, leading him to get blind and her mother to suicide. So this makes the audience experience catharsis, leading a sense to release.
Great, fantastic. Thank you very much, Camila. Let's continue with who else is typing. Juliana, please, dear Juliana. You're going to continue, right? So please start responding now.
Okay, so in this lecture, we have been presented to the fascinating topic of tragedy. And the teacher talks about classic tragedy and Aristotle as well. And he says that tragedy is more than a story, is where an heroic person struggles to find happiness, and this happiness is never coming. So throughout the story, there is a transformation of the characters, and the audience appreciate this transformation. In the tragedy, the characters accept their own faults and responsibilities. And the main topics are, for example, pride and death, and they can end also in sadness or suicide. And yeah, the audience feels that responsibility of the characters.
Great. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear Juliana. Is somebody lacking? I think that we have finalized, right? Or is somebody still lacking to respond? Or we have finalized? Yep. No? Nobody? We have finalized? Okay, I think that we have finalized them. Great. Well, so let me give you some feedback, all right? Very good. I like the responses way more than before. It was excellent. It was excellent. Well, you know, something general I wanted to say, first of all, time. For those of you who are, well, starting with these practices, right? We're going to practice like this very much usually. So whenever you see that your time is over, that is to say your minute has completely ended, it's better for you, trust me, to stop at that point. Even if you get tempted to continue speaking, even when your time is over, that is not healthy for you. Why? Because if you continue speaking, you're going to get used to it. So at the same time, at the very second you see the timer is completely empty, stop there, all right? Because if you continue, as I say, you're going to start getting used to it. And that is going to complicate matters a little bit difficult, okay? And well, because as I say, later on in the actual exam, you don't have the chance to speak farther than your minute. And you're going to believe that your response is being recorded when in fact it's not actually being taking into consideration, all right? So as I say, the best thing and the healthiest practice here will be to stop whenever you see that the minute is over, all right? But very good. And second thing for all of you, the pronunciation of the word Aristotle, Aristotle, yeah, it is difficult, I know, Aristotle, but nonetheless, you know, when you refer to that philosopher, Aristotle, I like to read philosophy, that's the reason why I tell you, but apart from that, great, Aristotle. Well, Natalia, very good, I think that it was a very good summary. Oedipus, right, the pronunciation of this hero, Oedipus, but apart from that, you know, you said, right, you didn't understand your letters. It's okay, you know, it happens, but well, I mean, of course, I know that you said it because we are practicing, but just in case if it happens to you later on, better not to say it, right? Better to just stay silent and to, I don't know, think about something to say that you remember of your own memories, but very good. I know that you said it anyways because we are practicing, right? But very good. Thank you very much, Natalia. Angeline, yeah, Angeline, fantastic as well. My response, my commentary here would be to include a little bit more of information, as I told you. I think that you are certainly capable of doing so. And I think that, of course, by applying and giving more to your responses, your score would increment or would increase very much, okay? So I would recommend you to include more information in your responses. But apart from that, great. Surely, I think that's as well. Maybe a little bit more of the topic would have been great. I know that some of you had some troubles to understand this one. It's okay, as I say, it depends on your familiarization with the topic. If you are somebody who studies this, knows a little bit of this, has listened to something related to these topics, that makes it understandable. Sometimes you have never listened about it, you have never thought, and you never liked it, you know, maybe. So of course it's difficult to understand, but don't worry, you're going to get better by practice, okay? But very good, Shirley, as well. Alejandro, I like your simplification of the topics, how you summarize it very well. You said it right. The character Oedipus basically was very much proud of himself. He went to city, he died, he married somebody, that person turned out to be his mother, etc., etc. I like that way how you simplify the topics. Very good. I think that is something to imitate. To summarize things with very simple words. Actually, here simplification works very well because you are trying to include a lot of information within 1 minute, and that makes it, well, something very much important to, as I say, to be simplifying things, because when you make it more complex and when you try to include that complexity in your response, it's going to, well, as I say, it's going to make things more complicated, but of course you don't want that. So whenever you can simplify, do it, right? In this case, he did it very well. Very good, Alejandro, excuse me. Eric, fantastic response. I also like it very much. I think my only recommendation here would be when you said at the end of your response, I think, you said right. And when you say I think, it's like as if you were expressing hesitation, right? Because you say I think. Well, I mean, you're talking, you're speaking, and you say, okay, I think. So when you say I think, it's like, as I say, as if you were expressing some sort of hesitation, doubt about what you're about to say. And I don't think that that is positive. My recommendation would be try to avoid any expressions like I guess, I think, maybe, and try to summarize everything in a very indicative manner, speaking with affirmations. It said this, it said this, it said this. He didn't say this, he said this, but trying to avoid those expressions, okay? But apart from that, fantastic, very good. Cristobal as well, very good. I think that, of course, we can improve our understanding, as I say, by reading more and getting used to these topics by practice, but fantastic, very good. Natalia as well, no commentaries, very good. Lucia as well, fantastic, no real commentaries. Guadalupe as well. Here the only word, tragedy, right? Tragedy. But apart from that, incredible, very good. Gisela as well. We had some troubles with the connection, right? But anyways, I listened to half of your summary and it was very good. All right, we're going to continue practicing, don't worry. Nathalie, no commentaries as always, excellent, very good. Juliana as well, and Camila, no commentaries. I think that it was excellent. I don't have anything to recommend or say on your responses. Fantastic. And I think that overall you have managed to perform very well in this practice. I know that, as I say, you are many classmates, and therefore it's difficult to, of course, practice more. Now, I have a contingency plan, don't worry. By the way, I sent to the WhatsApp group here some wrong mistakes. This was for my other group, by the way. Okay, don't get nervous. Here you have, for both of you, a drive carpet in which I have already sent and I have uploaded the practices that we have not been able to continue tonight, so that in your free time, you can simply get into your computer, use this chronometer. I'm gonna send it to you, by the way, just in case you want to use this one. And you can practice by yourself, okay? And if you actually want, you can send me your responses. I'm gonna listen to it through WhatsApp, of course, and I can give you some feedback, okay? Please feel free to do it. I'm gonna be delighted to do it. I know that we have not been able to practice a lot of exercises. So if some of you like to respond and to practice by yourself, record yourself with the audio WhatsApp or the WhatsApp audio, I'm sorry. And as I say, send it to me. I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to be very much glad to give you some feedback. All right. But as I say, there you are then with the carpet and also with the timer, right? So we're going to stop here. Tomorrow, we're going to continue with another part of the TOEFL exam. So please don't miss tomorrow's class. It's very important. And well, let us take your assistance, okay? Please help me with the traditional poll that we always fill, all right? That you know that you help me a lot with this. And well, let me take your assistance. If you have any question, please feel free to express it. Here we are. Great. So is here present Guzman Guadalupe?
Present.
Thank you very much, Guadalupe. What about Sonia Raquel? She's not incoming. Natalie, Anastasio?
Present.
Thank you very much, Natalie. What about John Ariel? Grados Lucia?
Present.
Thank you very much, Lucia. What about Reyes Camila?
Present.
Thank you very much, Camila. Paulina Yasmin?
Present.
Thank you very much, Yasmin. Alexander Christopher? Christopher. Okay, he was here, right? He told me that he had some troubles. I'm gonna mark it with present, don't worry. And finally, Melanie Natalia.
Present.
Thank you very much, Natalia. Luis Alejandro.
Present.
Thank you very much. Romina Angeline.
Present.
Great, thank you very much. Cesar Augusto. Wasn't here tonight, right? Rodriguez Juliana.
Present.
Thank you very much, Juliana. Shirley Karina. Thank you very much, Shirley. Anwar Josue. Okay. Cristóbal Ignacio.
Present.
Thank you very much. Gisela Maria.
Present.
Thank you very much, Gisela. What about Sofia Paulina?
Present.
Thank you very much. Eric Gabriel.
Present.
Thank you very much. Ariel Eduardo.
Present.
Thank you very much, Ariel. And finally, Juan Martín. Okay, Juan Martín was not here. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, students. Yes, Alexander, I got you. Don't worry. I got you. Great. Thank you very much, dear students, for your responses. I'm going to see you tomorrow. We're going to start with a new topic. Please don't miss tomorrow's class. It's going to be very important. The speaking section, task number 1, tremendously important. Okay. And don't worry that we're not going to have this problem anymore, because in the practices, all of you are going to practice at the same time through some Google documents. So as I say, I'm going to see you tomorrow. Thank you very much for your attention. Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you, teacher. Have a great
Thank you,
day.
teacher. Bye.
Thank you
Bye.
very much. See you later. Bye-bye. See you. Thank you.